There is a craft to broadcasting.
Ken Coleman, he is a commentator, has his own show, The Ken Coleman Show,
which airs live on WCGO every Monday through Friday.
I'm not saying this with any kind of, pride or arrogance, but I was one of the first people, to get in this whole thing. I was the only personality with radio experience. So he was like, give Coleman an hour-long show right before me each day.
You got to follow your heart here, Esmeralda.
I don't think it's a better product. I think it's a more accessible product. If you were to truly grade some of the biggest podcasts that are out there, and I'm not saying every one of them, and I'm not going to say anything so people can just let their imagination run, but some of these, if you were to grade them, just their interviewability, it's not impressive.
If you had to be forced to cut out every other thing that you do, can only do one thing that you do, what would you want to do? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Travis Makes Friends podcast. Today, I am making friends with the one and only Ken Coleman. Ken, what's up, man? Welcome to the show.
Good to be with you, Travis. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, of course, dude. It's really a miracle that we both made it in this morning. There's snow on the ground in Nashville, Tennessee.
And I thought it was a nothing burger based on the amount of snow on my front porch, but it's cold here. That's the problem. It's cold, and I don't have a vehicle made for that.
That's right. It's when you don't expect it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It just reminds me how grateful I am to live in the South.
Yeah, that's very fair.
Yeah.
I came from Vegas, and
oh my gosh.
Typically Vegas, though, it gets way colder than people think it gets.
Yeah.
People come visit me in January, February, and they don't bring a coat. And it's like, okay, but it's 40 degrees outside.
Yeah.
And it's windy,
right.
and it's overcast.
Right.
It still gets really cold.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, February's been super mild. So when I left home, it was like 73 and sunny.
Oh,
and then pulled up in Nashville.
Transport me to that, please.
But we made it. We're here.
Good.
First question I have for you is, how does one achieve the hair look that you've been able to achieve for so long?
One just goes with what one is given.
That's all it is.
Yeah. I don't do
no
anything.
Additional, nothing.
Yeah, I don't do anything special. I let it do its thing. I have a very quick process.
I was hoping for a secret,
I would say
man.
good hair product is essential.
Yeah.
When you have wavy kind of, that kind of hair. But I've always gotten comments on it.
Yeah.
But it's you go with what you have, and it only takes me about 3 or 4 minutes.
I've never really thought about it. Just always had hair until recently. I started not having hair. I was like,
yeah. Well, that's
like,
a thing.
oh no,
that's a thing. That's a thing. The hairline recedes.
Yeah,
it gets thin in certain spots.
Yep, up here, the little crown area.
Yeah, I'm not above dealing with that.
Yeah, I'm not either.
Yeah, I'm going to deal with it. I've just got too many other priorities right now. Like, that's way down the list, but sure.
It's one of the interesting things about the podcast is it puts you in touch with just random people. And we had this hair transplant doctor reach out, and I didn't get a free hair transplant. That would have been nice. But I did get a free PRP treatment to come out and do a whole interview an episode with their team and stuff. And so they shot up my head with a bunch of...
Did it work?
Well, I'm about 2-3 months in right now, but short answer is yes. There's a bunch of baby hairs growing in the the regions that were escaping quickly, faster than I was hoping that they would.
I've heard about that as well.
Yeah, it was
fascinating.
pretty effective. Yeah.
I think if I just, in my mind, if I'd keep delaying, the technology and the advancements are going to get so much better.
Exactly.
I'm trying to avoid as much pain as possible.
That's what I told my wife. I was like, I don't want to be in a position where I can't make the decision to have hair when I feel like we're right around the corner from it being very optional. Yeah. 10 years from now, where it's it's no longer whatever $15,000 for a transplant or something. They've come up with some new technology that
that's my
just enables everybody to have something at their house that they put on once a day, and then they have hair all the time.
And you've got enough on your face that you can do. I can't even do that.
The beard.
Yeah, if I tried to grow a beard, I'd look like a dog with mange. There'd be a spot here, and it's just not. It's not a pretty thing at all. How did we get on this topic?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. You asked.
Purposeful.
Sure. All right. Great. Thank you.
We got to give the people what they want, Ken.
Okay.
People want to know.
Yeah. I don't even know what the hair looks like today. I came in here a little bit on 2 wheels.
Frazzled.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for taking the time to do this,
Sure.
man. I was looking back in the archives and realized we had a conversation on the show 2018.
Oh, wow.
2018, 2019.
Yeah.
And doing some sort of book promo, I'm sure. But things look a little bit different around Ramsey HQ since that time period. But you've been around for the whole thing. How come?
The simple answer is because I'm supposed to be here. I mean, I'm not a guy that just sticks around to stick around. I love change. I love growth, but this is the longest I've been anywhere employed. So I started here in June of 2014.
Wow.
So as we sit here today, coming up on 11 years.
No kidding.
And the answer to that is that I believe in being present. I believe, in being where your feet are. And I think your heart leads you and your feet should follow. And I'm where I'm supposed to be. I don't know what the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years looks like in any area of my life. Certainly this, but I mean, that's why I'm still here.
What brought you here in the first place?
God and Dave Ramsey.
Okay.
It came out of nowhere. It was not something that I was actively pursuing. We had conversations maybe a year and a half, 2 years prior to me actually joining the team. I met with some of the executives here because I was friends with them.
Okay.
And we talked about this idea of, having a super host or a Ryan Seacrest type in the building. And at the time I was, pursuing, full hosting and broadcasting and television or radio and was doing it. And so it was an idea that was discussed, but it wasn't the right timing. And so I thought that the door was closed. It was a fun conversation and, not high stakes, low stakes. And then about a year later, I got the call and Dave had brought me up in a meeting. They were launching a new conference. He said, we don't have anybody that can host it. He knew my work. I'd done a lot of stuff with him. And then they said, is there something more for him too here? And so that's how that conversation came about.
So you were just doing independently?
Well, I had my own show in Atlanta and had my own business. And so was entrepreneur,
Sure.
bootstrapping it. And,
What was that business?
We were selling sponsorships to large live events because I was in the live event business as a host.
Gotcha,
So
okay.
that was the day job. And then I had
Going vertical.
I had the Ken Coleman Show, was doing that Monday through Friday drive time.
Wow.
On a radio station. So was pursuing and actively, doing radio.
Was it similar content?
I'd say similar, but it was a little broader because it's talk radio.
Yeah, sure.
So it was a little broader than as far as the content that I'd be talking about, but still in the area of, the concept behind the show was you get enough political talk radio and news during the day on drive time. How about some content that makes you better?
Yeah.
So, we would talk parenting, marriage, business, leadership, entrepreneurship. It was across the board. A little bit of cultural, politics, but not much.
Yeah.
And it was received very well because it was kind of a breath of fresh air. So I'd have a guest on, or I would do talk segments. It was a true talk show.
Sure. Did you have a general opinion on podcasting and podcasters at that time, being a radio host?
Well, yeah, I thought it was absolutely going to be the new format. I was already doing it. So if you go back, before I was doing the Ken Coleman Show on radio, I was with John Maxwell's company, and there was a large conference called Catalyst, and I launched the Catalyst podcast. And this was when people had iPods.
I was going to say that's like early stages podcasts.
Yeah, and I'm not saying this with any kind of, pride or arrogance, but I was one of the first people to get in this whole thing.
Right.
I was reading a magazine called Fast Company, and there was one of these little blurbs on the side of the page about that big.
Yeah.
And it was talking about a new idea called podcasting, where you did audio on your own, you uploaded it to Apple, and people could play it on their iPods. And again, this is when iPods were like revolutionary, and you had a little circle with your thumb, and if you bought it, you got a whole U2 album. Like, it was a big deal, and you're laughing about it now. That's what's funny about it, is the crew's laughing, but like, that was unbelievable. It's if you get the new iPod, you get U2's new album already uploaded.
I do remember that, because I remember thinking that like my iPod got hijacked, because I didn't know that was a thing. And then all of a sudden I looked at my, and we were, so I grew up in a very fundamentalist Baptist background.
Yeah.
We were not allowed to listen to anything other than like gospel
me too.
music.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that got put on my iPod, and then I got in trouble for it. I was like,
Right,
I didn't do it. It
Yeah,
wasn't
the devil's
like really
music.
this magically got onto your iPod.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely is what
Actually,
happened.
it did. Yes.
So I went to the Maxwell folks. We were contracting. My wife and I were doing our sponsorship sales business, and I was on my own because John had sold the company at that point. But I was still doing some stuff with the Catalyst Conference, and I got this idea, and I said, I'm trying to make it in broadcasting. I think I could talk these guys into me launching a podcast, and I interview all these big names from the Christian leadership space.
Okay.
Well, they went for it. So we launched the Catalyst podcast, I want to say in 2007, 2008.
Wow.
So to answer your question,
Early stage.
So here I am in where I was just telling you I'm in about 2011, 2012. So I knew that podcasting was going to be a viable alternative. It already was.
Right.
It has since gone bananas.
Insane.
Because technology's just made the entry,
Yeah.
the door for entry so much easier. But
Well, and ultimately, a better product is going to win in the long run. And I think a podcast is just a better product for the consumer. Just it's on demand. You can
I'll push
filter
against
through
that
stuff.
because I'm a traditional broadcast guy, and I will always be a traditional broadcast guy because I grew up listening to talk radio, and Rush Limbaugh was a hero, and I remember watching Peter Jennings, and Tom Brokaw and Dan Rather. So certainly my age is a part of this. I would say this: I don't think it's a better product. I think it's a more accessible product. I still think you can do great traditional TV.
Sure.
Yeah, no,
I
now at the end of the day, the medium has to adjust to the user,
Right.
And that's what we're seeing happen. But I appreciate what you're saying. But there's a lot of really crappy podcasts.
Oh yeah, no, I don't mean.
I mean, like I would say the majority of podcasts are crap.
Well, the numbers would also agree with you on that.
Yeah, but even some of the big podcasts.
That's very.
If I were to grade it by broadcast standards, and I mean this,
Yeah.
I'm popping off right now, but I don't
please,
care.
go for it.
And again, none of this matters per se, but because it's like the audience wants what they want. But if you were to truly grade some of the biggest podcasts that are out there, and I'm not saying every one of them, and I'm not going to say anything so people can just let their imagination run. But some of these, if you were to grade them, just their interviewability, it's not impressive.
Atrocious in some cases.
But again, let me also say that doesn't matter. And I am fine with people going where they want to go. But I do want to say that, like, there is a craft to broadcasting. There is a craft to interviewing.
Yeah.
And it's gotten watered down. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, no, that's very fair because there is a large. It was the number one most surprising thing to me when I started my show is that I had to learn how to have a conversation.
Yeah.
It was just surprising. I was just figured I was so focused on all the technical details and the name of the show and the equipment and getting everything dialed in, and then I hit record on my first episode and I was like, so
and that's great, by the way, and I love it.
Yeah.
So I'm not knocking the format. I love the format. I was one of the early adopters.
Yeah, right.
You
And now you've been able to not just have a podcast, but to excel to kind of top charts for all the different various mediums now that you're choosing.
Yeah, it's a competitive world. I mean, I'm blessed, to be a part of a massive machine that gets me a lot more eyeballs and ears than people who start out from scratch. So Ramsey Solutions has been, nothing but a blessing to me. But I mean, it's a very competitive world.
Yeah.
And it's now a part of the normal business model.
Right. We were just talking with the crew a little bit before we hit record and talking about how people are dubbing this election as the podcast election. And it's always interesting to look at political marketing because political marketing is just a forecast into the future of what business marketing is going to be. If you look at, all the way back to JFK and now up to Barack Obama on Facebook, and then now this election with Trump and JD Vance doing just a large swath of podcasts, and then the other side doing virtually none, and then you see the results happening. It's here to stay, I think.
Yeah, and keep in mind on that, politics is downstream of culture. So it's not surprising to me I was chuckling seeing all these stories. You
Same.
know, the only reason that this happened is because the president's got a teenage son who was like, Dad, you should
you know all
probably
the
go
attention
over
is here. Yeah.
Because politics is downstream of culture. In other words, it always is the last thing. So like the political class, the ruling class, they're always the last ones to jump on something.
Right.
And so podcasts obviously have been huge for a while. It's just the first election cycle where we've seen,
Other people
the actual
realize it.
candidates go, oh, we're going to treat this just like we would a 60 Minutes interview.
Right. Well, when you start realizing the numbers that they can get in front of by sitting in a room like this with 0 people watching versus the insane tour schedule that they would do to fly across the country to do an in-person rally with 6,000 people or something like that. It's like, but there's 1 million people that are going to listen to this episode.
And that's what I love about podcasts and YouTube. It is democratized media. And that is great. That's huge.
It was wild to me watching the commentary post-election for people that were just shocked. I don't know how many times I would hear somebody say something like, apparently this Rogan fan base is real. It's like, you're just figuring that out?
Yeah, it's
That's
nonsensical.
wild. That's like so out of touch because you're so far deep into the traditional media machine that you can't just recognize that the majority of people's attention is elsewhere.
Yeah. Well, this is a great point to make. It's a big world. And I think we would all do well to remind ourselves as much as possible how big the world is and how small we are and our frame of reference is. And that's a great example of it is, those kind of comments that seem ludicrous to us and yet not surprised by it. Because again, the more myopic, the more you got blinders on to the world around you, the more isolated your mindset becomes. So you say stupid things like that.
And then you're developing a new show now, right?
Yeah.
So you're always constantly looking at new ideas. Where did this one come from? Why start a new show?
Well, for a couple reasons. Number one, when I first launched the Ken Coleman Show at Ramsey, it was almost an emergency.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a fun story. I was on vacation with my family, and I get a call from one of our executives here, and he says, "Hey, you got a minute?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "You might want to sit down for this one," and it felt ominous, but he was like, "This is potentially great news. Don't get too excited because it's not a done deal." And then I was like, "Okay, what are we talking about?" And he had just come out of a meeting where Dave had been meeting with SiriusXM, and SiriusXM wanted to do a Dave Ramsey channel. And so when you got a channel, you got to fill the channel.
Sure.
Well, we had personalities at the time. I'd just been announced as a personality to help people win at work. But I had a lot of hosting duties, and so I was training a guy to replace me. And David said, take 6 months, transition this thing out, dive in deep on your content, your methodology, take your time. And then a month later, I get this call. And in the same meeting I'm talking about, Dave said to our team, Coleman, because he knew I could do radio. Mm-hmm. And so I've been doing radio for 4 or 5 years, so he knew I could do it. And he said, and I was the only personality with radio experience, and the only personality that had done it every day.
Yeah.
So he was like, give Coleman an hour-long show right before me each day. So that's a massive opportunity.
Yeah, right.
So they were like, what do you want to do? And I was like, sure, I'll do it. And I was like, how much time do we have to develop the show? And I was like, it's going to start in 2 months. And we got to hire a producer. We got to do a lot. And Dave just wants you to take calls. So just get in there and take calls. So there was no creative process.
Sure. There was no what do I want to do? How do we make it happen? Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm not griping about that.
Right. No, yeah. You got to seize the opportunity for sure.
Yeah, 100%. This is a dream come true. A literal dream to have a national show on SiriusXM. So I was like, God, yes, amen, thank you, let's do it. Mm-hmm. So there is So we got in, got going, then about a year or so later, we move into traditional radio. We syndicated, but it was a radio show first. Even though it was SiriusXM, It still worked on a kind of traditional clock, and then we syndicated on about 80 stations.
Okay.
Well, so while that's happening, podcast continues to grow. YouTube becomes a major player, and we're now going, okay, we got to be on those platforms, but we're a radio show first and foremost. So how do you take a traditional radio show that's got 4 breaks in the hour, 8-minute segments, now you got to cut those commercials out, make it a podcast, then you got to put it on YouTube.
Yeah.
And then, so the format of radio was limiting our growth on these other formats.
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
Okay, that's one. 2, what we found is the show was an emergency room. In other words, people would call in who were struggling professionally in a really tough place. I would help them, and then the audience that was listening would listen. I would help them, and we saw people coming in, but a lot of people leaving. In other words, we helped them,
Yeah.
and we did all these surveys, and they were like, man, Ken helped me a lot, but
Peace.
I'm out.
Yeah. Right.
It was an emergency room.
Yeah.
And so you look at those 2 key factors, the writing was on the wall that we had a lid on the show, and we reached that lid. And I love that you asked me this. I love talking about this because this is what a lot of people don't do. They're afraid to adapt. They're afraid to look at the realities and go, hey, this was great. It was a lot of fun, and but it's limited.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to be limited. So brought this up to leadership, and they agreed, and I said, we've got to be able to program to the platform. And
Yeah.
so traditional radio is not going up. Traditional radio is going down. So that's the impetus for the new show. But the new show is something that I have been kicking around for a long time.
Yeah, I want to jump into that, but really
Yeah.
quickly, I want to glaze over this one thing. I think this is a massive lesson that I've taken away recently. When I first started the show, it was all about consistency. It was
Yeah.
just like consistency. I always say like painful consistency. Just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
if you're not consistent till it hurts,
Yeah,
then you're
chop
doing
the
something
tree.
wrong. Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I would watch in real time people around me who had shows even longer than I did that started their podcasts 2012, 2013, 2014. And they would remain consistent, but that clearly was not the only factor. The show would never grow. And it was like, well, it's clearly not just about consistency, to your point about being able to be flexible, being willing to pivot. It's about consistency combined with improvement and introspection. And then those things over time will increase overall. But if you're just consistent, like it basically just taught me that consistency is just the barrier to entry. It's just the thing that gets you in the door. You have to remain consistent. It's not an option. However, from there, if you're not consistently improving, then you can just wind up doing, it's that the person's got, 1 year of experience, 30 years in a row type of a thing.
That's
it's
right.
like, well, you're not doing anything though. You
That's
got to
right.
learn and improve and do better than the last time.
That's right.
Or else consistency is just a waste.
And I think that, so for me, it was like, it's okay to say, hey, this was for a season, this was the right move. And it was.
Yeah.
Right? It would have been, if I look back on it, it'd been silly for me to go, no, Dave, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Because what comes out of it? What comes out of it is I learned how to coach people in a very short amount of time. And so now I sit here and I've coached over 10,000 people in 6 to 8 minutes.
Wow.
So I have developed some true super skills that I would not have had.
Yeah.
That play into the bigger picture.
And I watched, I came out here for an influencer event a few months ago.
Oh, yeah.
And my biggest takeaway was just like, man, Ken is a master at interviewing because they put you on the stage to interview basically all the people that were there for the influencer event on their topic. But obviously you didn't have any prep work. You were literally just like looking at a topic that they submitted 3 minutes before, and then you have a panel of 3 people who you don't know anything about, and then you had to immediately come up with interesting questions to ask them on the spot with little prep time, nothing to do, and it was just very clear that's like, this guy's been doing this for a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. Well, yeah, and I've always loved, that's how I broke into broadcasting was by doing interviews at this Catalyst conference, starting the Catalyst podcast, teaching myself how to do interviews, never took a class, never went to school for it. And so I take the craft really serious and I enjoy it.
Yeah.
And so Front Row Seat is the evolution of my journey but it's also a creative version of stuff that's influenced me. So there's nothing new under the sun. And so anybody who's old enough to get this math will totally get it. If you're not old enough to get this math, you could go look it up and you'll go, oh, so what is front row seat? Well, the math on it is Inside the Actor Studio meets Masterclass meets MTV Unplugged. That's the feel.
Yeah.
And so I've been influenced. You've been influenced. Every musician that's ever written a song has been influenced by other artists that all pour into that creative output.
Yeah.
And so this show is designed to not just bring in an audience and a broader audience, but also to keep them coming back. And, you know, you know this, by the way, at some point, every show hits some type of a plateau.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not about honestly, I'd be really shocked if even the top podcast or top YouTube shows are just growing incrementally at large rates. I'd be shocked. I don't think that's happening.
Yeah.
But are they bringing in new people, and are they keeping a large chunk of those people? That's the game.
Sure. Yeah. Retention is difficult.
Yeah. And so, you know, it's like I said, it's a big world and a lot of people out there.
Yeah.
You know, so for anybody trying to get into this game of podcasting or YouTube, you know, look, it can't just be about the numbers. Do numbers matter? Yes. But it's got to be about what are you doing with that audience?
Yeah.
And that's all about what are you doing for the audience.
And do you love it? I just don't think I would have made it this far had I not just really, really enjoyed it. Like if I would not have been willing to do it for free, because I say I would be willing to do it for free. And it was like, well, yeah, because I did it not only for free, I was paying to do it for a long time. It was coming out of my own personal expenses to fund my show, to fund me going to events and getting to know other people and ask them to come on and to join this group and to be a part of this thing and to pay to produce my actual show. Like all of those, I paid to do it because I just enjoyed it that much. And if the game is about, can you stick in it longer than everybody else and again continuously improve from the last time?
That's right.
And if you're getting into it just for like the fame factor or the status increase or something like that, it's like you're going to burn out so fast. And you see that in the numbers. That's why 90% of podcasts don't make it past episode 10, I think is the number. Because
that's crazy.
You think it's fun, and then you get in and start doing it, and it's like, oh, well, I didn't go viral overnight. Well, never mind.
Right.
You know, I had this guy recently do some coaching and stuff in this world a little bit, and this guy jumped on a call with me, overpaid for a ton of production on content that just should not have been. He paid like $20,000 to get 5 episodes produced of a show that just was nonsense. And he was basically asking me, he was like, what should I do at this point? I have these like 4 episodes. He was like, my thought was I was just going to release them, and then if they take off, I'll do more. And I was like, well, I'll save you the trouble. It's not going to take off.
Right.
It's not. So like, just don't. If that's your plan, then don't do anything else.
Right.
That's a bad plan because it's not like 100% guaranteed. This super niche thing about, you know, I won't say the niche because I don't want to expose the guy, but yeah, it's just like, I'll answer your question for you right now.
Yeah.
It's a no.
Right.
If you don't have a minimum 3 years committed to this process, you're gonna leave disappointed.
Yeah.
So you got to reframe instantly, or else you're gonna be done.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Like ASAP.
Yeah.
So of all the things that you do now, you obviously have written several books. You have the Ken Coleman Show. You have this new show that you're doing. You co-host Ramsey. What's the thing that you enjoy doing the most? If you had to be forced to cut out every other thing that you do, can only do one thing that you do, what would you want to do?
Well, you're forcing me to choose one. It's very difficult because the 3 things that I enjoy doing most is coaching, conversations, and commentary. So in my role, those are the 3 things that I enjoy doing most, and those are the things that I'm best at doing.
Yeah, unique skill
So
set
enjoy
too.
doing the interviews and having the conversations with the people I get to have. I really love coaching people. And I enjoy the commentary. I'm on Fox and Fox Business quite a bit. I'm on podcasts, so I enjoy commenting on the world at work and trends and culture as well. If you're going to make me choose, I would say coaching.
Okay.
Because it is, while I enjoy conversations and digging and will always do that, I do love coaching more than anything else. Because of the one-to-one interaction.
Sure.
And I feel like I could meet that person where they are.
The like direct impact, direct feedback.
Yeah. When I do keynotes for Ramsey or for other companies, I always try to involve Q&A I always do it at Ramsey events.
Yeah.
So I was the first personality to do that here. I kind of went to Dave and I said, look, I know I got 60 minutes, but I'd rather speak for 30 and then talk to the audience for 30. And I love that more than anything. That moment where I've just communicated on a topic, but now the audience is hitting me and I'm on a tightrope and I've got to meet them where they are.
Yeah.
So the coaching, if I had to choose, that would be it.
You have been dubbed America's career coach.
Yeah, some publicist came up with that that's no longer here, so I told him to stop saying that.
All right, never mind. Cut that.
No, it's okay. No, I love that. Yeah, that moniker is on the ash heap of history, as Ronald Reagan used to say.
Ash heap of history.
But we had that title for a while when we were doing the Ken Coleman Show, which was at the time it was all coaching, and then we kind of adapted it a little bit, So yeah, I've been called that. But
do you find yourself doing this stuff in your free time as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
all the time.
Anything in addition to that?
What do you mean?
Hobbies outside of hosting, reading, consuming.
Oh, my
content?
hobbies?
Yeah.
Oh, pickleball and poker.
Pickleball and poker.
Yeah.
I
only have 2 hobbies because I don't have time for more than
anything
that.
else.
Yeah. I dropped golf couple years ago because I discovered pickleball, and pickleball was the mistress that stole my heart. So I divorced golf. I still love golf. I enjoy getting out when I do, but again, I didn't have time for 2 hobbies.
Yeah.
So pickleball is it, and then poker with my buddies.
Yeah.
I enjoy that. Both of those 2 hobbies are very communal.
I was just about to ask about that.
One's healthier for you than the other, though.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, you can make an argument.
Right.
The show's called Travis Makes Friends, and it kind of happened naturally because the original show that you were first on was called Build Your Network.
Yeah.
And it was for helping professionals network, and it was very, very niche specific.
Yeah.
Kind of what we were talking about earlier. I got burnt out. I did like 800 episodes about networking, and I was like, I cannot continue to talk about networking all the time.
Right.
So we brought into the show to Travis Makes Friends.
Yeah.
But it kind of ended up being this happy accident because I started realizing that like, wow, this is actually a public health crisis as defined by the U.S. Surgeon General, to say that loneliness is now epidemic levels and highest that it's been in recent history. You mentioned a couple of those hobbies, and both of them, like you said, are very, very communal. How do you view adult friendship? How do you encourage people to go make more friends? Because you're the career guy, right? So you help a lot of people with their careers, which is obviously a very intricate and vital part of purpose and happiness and fulfillment. Yeah. But all of it pales in comparison to the relationships that we have when it comes to overall human happiness over the long term. So what's your advice on that?
Well, the longest and most revered study on relationships in history has been done by Harvard, and it's now in its close to 85th year, somewhere in that range. Mm-hmm. And they've been following people from birth to death. And David McClellan, who for many years oversaw the project because it's a continuing, study at Harvard, is quoted as saying that 95% of your success or failure in life is directly related to the people you spend the most time with. So we start there.
Yeah.
When anybody asks me about friendships, and certainly in a professional context, so I'm trying to help people who want to win professionally. Like you see work as a contribution, not just something I do to provide. There is no question that data is indisputable, and it's also true that it is easily applied to your professional journey. So if you aren't where you want to be professionally, the first thing I would look at are the people you're spending time with. The first thing. Yes, skills, hard skills and soft skills. We would talk about that, right? But the first thing I would do is check the people I'm spending time with, because those hard skills and soft skills, those will not be enough if you're in the wrong greenhouse.
Yeah.
So let's take those people you're spending the most time with, and let's think of them as the environment that you're around all the time, and that's the greenhouse. And if you're not in the right greenhouse, you can have all the ingredients to play, but it will not grow.
Yeah.
And so, I think there are 5 archetypes that I would recommend. Like, find these friends, and not only find these friends, but then be this type of friend to other people.
Okay.
And this is relatively new content. I've only shared this once in one webinar.
Sweet.
But this is like Krispy Kreme. The hot now sign is on.
Let's get into it.
Because this is
I was going to
fresh.
say, well, that's it for today.
Yeah, this is fresh. Now, I think you need the pace setter. I think you need the challenger. I think that you need the cheerleader. And I think that you need the entertainer. How many is that? Is that 4?
Pace setter, challenger,
So
cheerleader,
pace setter.
entertainer, 4.
Pace setter is the one that gets out in front. They're that person who maybe they're a little bit older than you, but they're certainly more successful than you. And you're not hanging out with them and being with them because you're trying to keep up with the Joneses. I would liken this to they just naturally pull you into their pace. When you're around them, you feel like, man, I'm inspired. The way they live, the way they work, they're just naturally
pick up on their energy.
That's right. When I trained for a half marathon several years ago, I ran with a couple guys that were experienced, and I found that when I ran with them, my pace at the end of the run was a good bit quicker than had I done it myself. And the reason was I was trying to keep up with them. Right. But not in a comparison way, but just when you're around those people, they're going to pull you. That's the pace setter. You need a challenger. You need that friend who, so I got my buddy Les, who's the pace setter, and then I got my buddy Kevin, he's the challenger. He's the kind of guy that when you're around him, you got a great idea, you take your ideas to Kevin, because he's going to naturally push and poke and find holes in it.
He's not a yes man.
He's not a yes man.
Yeah.
And I don't want to use devil's advocate, but I think that's not what they are, but I think people get that idea. And so the challenger is just constantly, they're going to take your ideas and they're going to make the idea better, or they're going to make you better. They're going to protect you from stuff because, again, they're willing to challenge you. Okay. Then I'm thinking about my buddy Chris. He's the cheerleader. You need a cheerleader in your life. See, they're there on the rough days. They're there in the barren seasons.
Yeah.
They're there when you face rejection. They're there when you face failure. They're not fake, but they are a legitimate cheerleader, and they always find the positive.
Yeah.
And they always transfer their belief to you.
That's a great way to say it. Yeah.
Then you need the connector. This is the one that I forgot just momentarily. I told you it was fresh.
Yeah.
The connector. This is my buddy Ben. Now, the connector is somebody who's just so willing. They're the human proximity principle. They're so willing to share their connections with you. My buddy Ben, we'll be having a coffee and we'll be talking about stuff. He goes, hey, you need to meet so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. And you kind of go, that'd be great. And like 2 or 3 days later, my inbox, bing, bing, bing. He sent all 3 connections that he mentioned, and they're all people that are worth hanging out with. And they've led to some things. Sometimes it doesn't lead to anything at all. But he's so willing to take one of his most valuable assets is his
relationship capital, yeah.
And he transfers it into your account. That's huge. And then the last one is you need the entertainer. That's my buddy Yale. And Yale's a guy that you want to hang out with when you just need to be lifted. It's not the cheerleader, but this is just we need some fun.
Right. Need some distraction in my life.
Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, you're not going to talk about business.
Right.
You're not going to talk about relationships. You're just going to go have fun. Now, I'm not saying you won't talk about those things, but then you need that friend in your life that you just when you're around them, you're having fun and you're laughing And I really believe in this one. The others tend to be a bit more serious, I think, but you need that entertainer in your life who's a good friend that when you're together, you just laugh.
Brings out your inner kid.
Yeah. And you realize that no matter what's going on in life, we can still laugh. We can still just have a good time.
Yeah.
And I think that as we become adults, we tend to forget about that valuable thing when you're a teenager and you're just sitting around telling stupid jokes or doing stupid things and you just laugh so hard your face hurt.
Yeah.
And so I think you need those people. So it's the pace setter, these in no particular order, the challenger, the cheerleader, the connector, and the entertainer. And I believe that those 5 friends, those types, those archetypes, if you have those 5, each one of those represents a finger on my hand. But if you are in intentional community, to have those type of people in your life, watch what happens. They come together as a fist. And a fist is a symbol of strength. And I believe that if you want to win professionally and win personally, I'm going to say the Harvard study's right. And so if 95% of my success or failure in any area of my life, physical, spiritual, relational, professional, mental, emotional, you keep going, right? The people I'm spending the most time with are having a massive effect on them. Yeah. So I want to be intentional. So my challenge to your audience would be find those types of friends, find them.
Yeah.
And then also flip it. You be that for somebody else. The question I get when I share this on a webinar on LinkedIn, it's only the first time, this is the second time I shared that content. So I don't know if it resonates or not. It resonated very well on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And here's what people were asking me. Can I be all 5 of those? The answer is yeah, you can. You can be all 5 of those, right? And you can have a friend, Travis is my friend. You could be, maybe you're the challenger one day, but another day you're the cheerleader. So it's not such a hard and fast.
Yeah, it's malleable.
It is, but I will tell you, I came up with the content because I was thinking about this very issue.
Yeah.
And I thought about those 5 guys. And literally that's how I developed the archetypes.
Yeah, just by looking to see like what role they played in your life.
Yeah, I mean, because they play such a huge role in my life.
Have you found that these types of friends are recent connections, or have you found that they tend to be people who've been around for a long time?
Some have been around a long time, some are new.
Okay.
Ben, Chris, and Yale are less than 5 years.
Okay.
Kevin and Les are 20 plus.
How have you met most of these people? Let's go the 5-year guys. The 20-year ones are a little bit, we can go back in the past.
Yeah.
But
one
when
of the
you're
guys,
growing up, it's easier to meet people.
One of the guys I met in the bleachers of a high school football game because his kid and my kid were going to the same school. Another guy I met in the parking lot of a grocery store in my neighborhood.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. It's too long of a story and your audience won't care. But it was not a random thing, but it looked random.
Yeah, yeah.
We both had the same football gear on and we're both Michigan guys. He played football at Michigan. I'm a Michigan fan. He says, go blue to me. I say, go blue to him. He asked me if I went to school there. I said, no, my dad did. Did you go to school there? He goes, yeah, I played football there. I said, what years? He tells me. Boom.
Yeah.
3 days later, we were having a cocktail.
Love it.
And it just developed from there. So, and then the other guy met at a Bible study. So this idea that, you got to have all this history is also short-sighted. Mm-hmm. And it's, are there like values?
Yeah.
And
like values is a big one.
Yeah. And then is there just a natural chemistry? But here's the key to that. None of those relationships, those 3 that I told you, so high school football, Kroger parking lot, and a Bible study. Yeah. I'm really glad you asked me this because the lesson here is that I was interested in them and I was willing to be intentional to lean in a little bit and ask a few questions. And the more interested you become with somebody, the more interesting you become to them. And so they reciprocated, and then we found that there were some sparks.
Yeah.
So there's got to be intentionality to be open to meeting people. And by the way, be open to the fact that you'll meet some people where it's like,
Yeah, right, exactly.
Because I can tell you, I met other dads in those same bleachers.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I've met other people at Kroger.
Yeah, right.
Not a lot.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen a lot to me, but
Yeah.
I have. And or I've met people in other places publicly, and it just hasn't turned anything. And I've certainly met other people at Bible study.
Yeah, right. I read this great book recently. It's called We Need to Hang Out. It was written by Billy Baker, who's a journalist, and he got this this assignment that he initially was not happy about, but it was basically write this piece on adult friendship. And he initially was just like, whatever, I'll put something together. And it led him down this like 3-year journey of studying loneliness and friendship. And so the whole book is kind of memoir style, written about his journey to figure out that like, oh, I'm actually in need of this exact thing. I haven't talked to my friends in a long time. Let's do this. So he wrote this entire book. And like the punchline of the book, it's setting you up to kind of make you think that, you know, there's a formula, there's a secret formula to going out and making friends as an adult. The punchline of the book basically comes down to there's just a magic to friendship that you can't duplicate, that you can't plan for, that you can't schedule into your calendar.
It's totally true.
It's just a certain alchemy that has to exist. But you'll never get to that alchemy if you don't put things into your calendar, if you don't have some sort of intentionality around it, if you're not putting yourself in a position to meet new people or
That's right.
have a cocktail with somebody or something like that.
Yeah, what comes to me as you said that was the root word of relationship is what?
I don't know.
You know what it is. Relate.
Oh, yes. Okay.
The root word of relationship is relate. And so if you think of it in that context, I don't relate to everybody. You know?
Right.
I mean, I don't. Can I find some commonality with just about anybody? Sure.
Yeah.
Of course. But the idea of I relate to you, if I say that to you, that's a pretty heavy word.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Absolutely. It's like, you know, the millennial expression is the vibe, you know, just like sometimes you don't vibe with somebody, and that doesn't make
great way of saying it.
you a bad person or them a bad person or anything intrinsically bad about the
Absolutely.
connection. It just means that, you know,
Absolutely.
I might see them at the conference and give them a hug and say, what's up? And let's go get a beer. But like after the conference, I'll probably see you next conference.
That's true in relationships too. I mean, I've dated a lot of pretty women that I did not want to marry.
Yeah. Right.
You know?
Right. Well, Ken, I appreciate you taking the time, man. I know we got to get you out of here and get on to some other things in the schedule. But before we take off, can you give me any distinction between a professional network and personal friendship? Is there a distinction? If so, what?
Yeah. Friendships are your ride or die. You know, those are people that you're actually doing some form of life with. And it's an intimacy level. So the intimacy with friends should be far greater. And so it's a very different relationship. The professional network is nothing more than a phone book. You know? I mean, in all reality. Meaning
a necessary phone book.
Very necessary.
Yeah. But a phone book nonetheless.
Yeah, and but that sounds really cold, but I'm saying it that way to kind of get everybody's attention because I think there's a wide gap. I'm not saying that you aren't friendly to that network.
Of course.
But let's be honest. Like, if you do it right, you've helped enough people. So if I'm thinking of, I could think of 5 different names right now. I just forced myself to think about my phone. It's sitting over there. I'm thinking about 5 names of guys right now that I'm not friends. They're not my friend. You know what they are? They are a professional acquaintance. We are friendly when we're together, but we don't talk on the regular. And
there's no group chat.
There's no group chat. And we have helped each other.
Sure.
And so therefore it is not a gross thing if I were to reach out to them and go, oh, hey. And same thing if they were to reach out to me. Because there has been a reciprocal network. So I think the professional network is a resource that must be, I believe in it. I believe in it. And it must be kept up, you know, like the phone book needs to be updated.
Yeah, right.
But nonetheless, it's a phone book.
Yeah.
And I mean, I meant to say Yellow Pages. 'Cause people don't even know what that is. But like, it was like, okay, I need to look for a florist. So I'm going to go to the florist section. And so I think your professional network needs to be also organized that way.
Yeah,
right? So
like the old school Rolodex would be.
a true phone book but a true phone book or Yellow Pages was categorized. So like, you want a roofer, here's all the roofers in the Yellow Page. So in your professional network, same deal. Like, you want some financial investment people that are entrepreneurial, that, you know, so I've got guys like that I'm very intentional to have a cigar with on a regular basis. I was just the other day having a cigar with a guy that if we sat here and I said, hey, let's be honest, like, we've been in the room together a few times, but we're not friends. And he'd say, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, right.
But we're friendly to the point that, you know, I'm having a cigar with him the other day, and he's dumping all kinds of great investment advice on me. He's like, hey, I'll help you. Next time I hear about a thing like this, low risk, but a potential nice little exit, he goes out, and that's great. So you need people like that in your life, right? So that's just one particular category.
Yeah.
And so think of your life in the categories of where you need to know people. And if you do that and think about it that way, and then develop your professional network, then this is a strategy.
Yeah.
And it is a collection of contacts that are strategic. That's how I would describe that. So that's very different than friendship. When friendship is not about, advancement, right? Friendship is about wellness.
That's a great way to
Right?
put it. Yeah, yeah.
Like,
It's
if you're
about the
living
friendship
well,
itself.
you got some
Yeah.
deep friendships,
Right.
and it's about life.
Yeah,
You know?
love that
Because
distinction.
my closest buddies, they're very supportive of the work I do because I have a very public role. So but they don't give a crap about any of this. They don't care who I've interviewed.
Right.
And what I mean by that is, like, they might say, "Oh, you got somebody that's really cool."
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Happy for you, supportive of you,
could care
but
less how
doesn't
many
matter.
Instagram
Yeah.
followers I
Yeah,
have,
exactly.
which is great.
Yeah, it's a breath of fresh air. when you go
Yeah,
around
we're not
those
sitting around
people.
talking about how cool
Yeah.
my job is.
You know, I realized that's why I asked for the distinction, because I spent so long talking about networking on the show. I went so hard, like, building a professional network, that I was a bad friend in all sense of the word for probably a couple of years, where I just was like, I'm so focused on this piece, and I conflated the two things as being the same thing. And then I realized recently, the last couple of years, it's like, you can't exchange that wellness that you get, the energizing feeling that you get when you just go hang out with a couple buddies. You know, like, we're still playing video games and eating
Yeah.
pizza and drinking beer and
Are you
telling
really
stupid
playing the
jokes.
video games?
Yeah. We a couple buddies of mine came out to Nashville actually about a year ago. It was right during a big health scare for
I
me.
love that you're still doing that. I can't remember. I play maybe 2 or 3 times a year, and it's just by myself because
Yeah.
it's golf.
Well,
PGA golf.
now I play
It's
with my
very
son,
relaxing.
which has been really cool.
Well, I know
but-
my boys are older.
Oh, okay.
And by the way, they got to a point at 13, 14 where they were smoking me in Madden in NBA Live.
It was
and
no
I
longer
was like,
fun.
I'm
Yeah.
done. Yeah, I don't want to get destroyed by 40 in
Yeah.
NBA Live.
Right.
Can't even get the ball up the court. So they got to the point where I was like, so then I just play golf.
Yeah.
And that's just me. I need my brain to veg out.
Yeah, no, my buddy literally brought his Nintendo Switch to our Airbnb in Nashville, and we played Super Smash Brothers, which is a
That's
game we've
great.
played since
I
the
love
Nintendo
it.
64. And
Yeah.
just cutting up and having fun. You just realize it's like,
Yeah.
this is different. It's
Yeah,
wildly
my
different.
thing is cigars
love a
because
good cigar.
you smoke a good cigar. It's a 20 to 30 minute smoke,
At least.
and I like to say that the cigar is a bridge to a bro, and it forces us to slow down. We're not on our device. We're savoring not just the tobacco, but really we're savoring just manhood and just being real. And
Yeah.
there's no nonsense.
Yeah.
I literally got a call that night from a buddy in my neighborhood. He goes, "Hey, you guys want to come over and join me in my hot tub?" He just built this in-ground, beautiful, big sauna, you know. And I was like, you would have thought that I was 10 years old getting asked to spend the night at my buddy's house. I'm 50 years old, and I was like, Stace, are you cool? And of course, I'm nothing going on at night.
Yeah.
You know, my kids are older, and she's like, yeah, go.
Yeah.
And I'm like in my humidor grabbing a couple sticks, you know, throwing my swim trunks on.
Right.
Can't wait to get over there just to sit and talk and
Yep.
laugh and
Yep.
smoke a cigar. I mean,
Love
that's how boring my life is too. It's a commentary on how non-exciting
Just
my life
excited
is.
you are to do something. Yeah.
Well, no. I was excited just to hang out with a buddy. That's the point I'm making.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have nothing else going on.
Yeah. But that's the thing about a good friend, man. You can do absolutely nothing and have a great time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ken, thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for
I
having
appreciate you. Where can people go to find the new show?
Yeah, KenColeman.com. Best way to find the show. It's called Front Row Seat with Ken Coleman. It's on YouTube. Podcast comes out every Tuesday.
Great. KenColeman.com. Go check out the show if you like anything we do here on the show. I know you'll love what Ken's got going on over there. So thanks so much for doing this. Remember, everybody else tuning in, listening, watching. Remember to leave every relationship better than you found it. We'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out.